Farty.
You're listening to Contesting Wrestling Premium. We are reflecting upon the Royal Rumble episode, and this is a compliment to that, in which we watched 3 more Royal Rumbles.
Yeah. Evan's turned off wrestling forever now, guys.
Yep,
You're welcome.
I am a broken shell of a man, and my strongest desire is to commit some form of regicide so as to make sure there are no more Royal Rumbles. No, actually, you know what? I have enjoyed. I watched 6 Royal Rumbles. I would say I enjoyed a total of 2.7 of them.
2 points.
See, I thought you were going to say you're actually just a fan of regicide in general.
Well, that's on the record.
If you know the name of the king or queen being slaughtered, press 1 and press 9.
So for this episode, we watched Royal Rumbles 1999, 2005, and 2007. By the end of the last one, and just in the last 2 weeks, we watched 6 Rumbles. I was really getting burnt out on Rumbles, so I can't imagine how you felt, Evan.
I am glad that that 99 was saved for this round, because I enjoyed 99 far more than any of the other ones. I think, and
it's lots of fun.
Or at least I would say I enjoyed 99 as much as the 2018 women's match. I would say those are the 2 I actually enjoyed, and then there are fragments of the rest that total up to about.
See,
you seem to like 92 pretty good with Ric Flair,
Yes.
See, I thought you were gonna 1999 was gonna be the one that broke you into pieces.
No, I didn't know what I'm not a huge fan of the Attitude Era thus far, but I just thought 99. So the big problem...
On that real quick, I think the Attitude Era really lent itself to things like the Royal Rumble because there were so many stories going on. Everyone was actually doing something kind of interesting, even if it was, horribly offensive or really just ridiculous and stupid and sophomoric. Everyone was doing something, so you got this crazy confluence of all these storylines coming together in the Rumble.
And it seemed like 99 out of all of them was the most. I guess I don't know enough about the process to say it was well booked versus other ones being poorly booked, but it seemed to be it had the most coherent structure. It was the thing that was able to sustain an hour more than any of the other ones, because pretty much all the other ones would have some stretch of time where I was a little even I did enjoy 92. But that they all had stretches that were kind of boring, and 99 seemed to be the best balance of a larger overarching story and then sort of like little episodic moments within it.
Well, in the boring parts, they were always able to shoot away from the ring, and then someone was actively being kidnapped or face down in the women's bathroom or something.
And they had the advantage of perhaps the greatest rivalry in wrestling history between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon at its peak of intensity playing out throughout the entire match.
Well, it is, if I may get onto a tangent here, in the 90s, there was there was all this anti-corporate stuff and like fuck your boss and all this stuff, because we hadn't yet really been able to, we hadn't formulated the full language of what was wrong with and it's it's you don't hate corporateness, you hate capitalism.
Late-stage capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. You don't hate
Occupy Wall Street.
This is the 90s were a dark time because the Soviet Union had just fallen and all. I'm not a tanky, but I'm just saying it seemed like this was the only path that was available, and so people were like, something feels wrong, but I can't quite so it must be that everything's too corporate, and it must be that I just hate my boss because my boss is an asshole, and obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin treats Vince McMahon the way we all wanted to treat our boss.
Yeah, that was specifically and explicitly what they were doing and what they were going for.
Yeah. Everyone wants to punch their boss a little, even the nice bosses.
Yeah.
There's not many of those.
But Stone Cold was very much like if Dilbert was super fucking ripped.
Right.
Back when, if anybody is only familiar with the modern incarnation of Dilbert used to be an actually kind of funny comic that was about like the perils of working an office job and frustrations. Now, if you read Dilbert, it is a right-wing screed in which the boss character is the good guy.
Is it really right
yeah.
now?
Oh,
okay. I didn't
Scott
know
Adams
Dilbert had fell so hard.
Oh my God, Scott Adams is like a borderline eugenicist. Yeah. Scott Adams is a fucking crazy person.
Oh, and that's the rise and fall of Dilbert will be our next mini-sode, everybody.
Yeah, the original idea of it was really good. They never even told you what the company did. It was just the banality of office life.
Let me give you some quick background on this Rumble.
Yes.
So Steve Austin had won the previous 2 Royal Rumbles, 97 and 98. At WrestleMania 14, he had defeated Shawn Michaels for his first WWF championship. Immediately afterward, like the next pay-per-view, Vince screws him out of the title in a match with Kane. And the whole year of story from then on is Austin trying to get the title back and Vince screwing him over and over again.
Well, Austin regained the title the next night from Kane, but like he kept winning it and losing it. Austin, for being such a big star, never really had a very long title reign because the money was in him chasing it.
Right. So this is his like 5th or 6th attempt. Like he gets fired, he gets rehired, and in his contract he gets a guaranteed title shot, and that has to do with Shane messing around with Vince. And then he gets screwed out of that one.
Yeah.
And so his last chance, really, to get the title match at WrestleMania 15 would be to win the Royal Rumble. So in order to screw him again, Vince puts him at number 1, puts himself at number 30, which Commissioner...
At number 2.
Well, right? Vince puts himself at number 30, and Commissioner Shawn Michaels says, no, you're going to be number 2. And exactly how the power structure works is a little bit opaque. As many things in wrestling, but so Vince ends up being number 2, but he also, to ensure that Austin isn't going to win, he puts up $100,000 bounty for anyone to win the Rumble instead of Steve Austin.
Which he mentions on commentary that $100,000 will come out of Shane McMahon's trust fund.
Right. For rehiring Austin, I think.
Yeah, for rehiring Austin. Now, on a larger, like, zoomed-out booking level, they needed a main event for WrestleMania, and the main event that they were angling towards, which they eventually did, was Steve Austin versus The Rock, the first of 3 non-consecutive WrestleMania main events between the two. And there was just something between those two when they were in the ring. You know, I'll never say that they had, like, the kind of 5-star classics that Bryan Danielson had, but they had some crazy electricity every time they fought. The two of them were clearly the top 2 guys in the business at the time, jockeying for the top spot. They both had very different but equally intense charisma, and the people wanted to see it.
And it made sense for Austin to be chasing The Rock.
Right.
But Austin had already won 2 Royal Rumbles in a row.
Right.
So they didn't want to give him the Royal Rumble again. Even though the crowd would have been perfectly happy with it because they loved Austin. So they decided to go with the swerve and this time give it to Vince.
It worked.
Now, to tie it to the Rumbles that we watched in the main feed, the whole structure of this with Austin getting injured and having to leave for a while, there's a clear parallel. They tried to do this again in 2016 with Reigns, and that was not successful. This I thought was very successful because it felt earned. It felt like, it opens up with this great little episode between Vince and Austin. It's in the bathroom. My single favorite moment in all of the wrestling I have watched thus far is when they cut back to the ring and there's just like the third guy there, like, where is everybody? when they're fighting in the bathroom.
That's Draws, yeah.
So Betsy,
Draws.
These were all your choices.
I
Right?
believe
Yes.
05 might have been Ben's choice.
Yeah.
But 99
which I
was
somewhat
certainly
regret.
99 and 07 were my choices. 05, blame Ben for that one.
I will. We're going to get into that.
Well, tell us what you liked about 99.
Just everything. It's just such a shit show in the best way possible. It's like everything that was good about the Attitude Era in one Royal Rumble match. Like half the time it's not even on the ring. At one point I said literally Stone Cold is face down in the ladies' room, and it's like they should get him to a hospital quick. Except then he's driving the ambulance back.
They make sure to mention that it's the women's bathroom
Right.
over and over again because they found that hilarious. I suppose
you have Mabel literally getting kidnapped and
Oh,
thrown
well,
in like a dark van or something.
one of the great things about these 3 Rumbles put together, Evan, is you got the whole story of Viscera.
You did, yeah.
I was
You
wondering
didn't get
about
Big Daddy
that.
V. You didn't get Big Daddy V. The
Not
sad
Big
ending.
Daddy, but the whole transformation from Mabel into Viscera into the world's largest love machine.
Where he
Viscera.
comes out as a couch, apparently.
There was the second one was Vampire Viscera, right?
Yeah,
When he
yeah,
was
yeah.
Yes.
It was
full
like
on-
the tail
Yes.
end of that.
So-
Because there was another vampire guy too. At least there were 2
there
times.
were a couple of
Gangrel is
vampire
probably
guys.
who you're
3
thinking of.
Gangrel, and then there was Kevin Thorne in the 07 Rumble.
Yeah.
There were 2
They
separate
re-
vampire characters.
They really love doing vampires. They've never quite been able to get it right, though. Gangrel, I think, came the closest.
Because there was one guy that looked like the bartender at a club in a Vampire the Masquerade spin-off novel.
That sounds like Kevin
That's
Thorne.
definitely Kevin Thorne.
and
yeah.
then Viscera was the bouncer at the club
Right.
in the Vampire tie-in novel.
Gangrel, by the way, who's in the 99 Rumble, that's an actual White Wolf character.
It is.
Really?
Yeah,
They own the
Gangrel, yeah.
trademark for that, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
They had to. Vince never understood goth. Like he never got it. No matter how many times people tried to explain it to him or show him that it's popular, he never got it. Like, and it was never more prevalent that whenever like women who like had kind of a goth look came in, Vince just didn't understand what the appeal was, whatever it was.
But they brought in Kevin Thorne and Shelly Martinez. What
Right.
was she called? Ariel?
Yes, Ariel.
Because, Twilight was really big at the time.
Right.
And they wanted to tap into that, but yeah, they
I
didn't
think
quite
that
know
was
how.
even pre like Twilight.
I think the books were out,
I
not
think
the movies.
maybe.
I, I do want to quickly run through my descriptions of randos that
yeah.
came out that I didn't know and see if we could figure out who's who.
We should do this for all of them.
Before you do that, just real quick, did you catch Young Edge when he came out?
I did
Baby
see Edge. Yeah, yeah.
That is his first Rumble.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to comment on that too because you have Draws and Edge, who at the time were the 2 like promising up and coming stars. Even though I wasn't really watching very much at the time, I was aware of both of them. Edge, of course, ended up having a Hall of Fame career. Draws, unfortunately, only about a year later, was paralyzed in a match with D'Lo Brown on a botched powerbomb.
Yeah,
So-
from the waist down, I think it is.
I think he like broke his neck, didn't he, or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, or his back, something like that.
He's most famous, I think, for the film Beyond the Mat, where they show backstage when he got his WWF tryout, and part of his gimmick as Draws was that he like puked a lot.
On command.
he-
As a football player, he used to throw up on the field.
Right, that was the big selling point for Vince McMahon hiring him, was that he could puke on cue. So there's this great scene with Vince like, all right, so this is how it's going to work. I'm going to announce he's going to puke. He's going to puke. And then you puke. And then he did.
Is that really appealing?
Well,
To,
keep in mind, like 98, 99, like not only just wrestling attitude era, but just the culture in general. Like South
Yeah.
Park was really
Right,
big.
that was a gimmick
guess.
on South Park.
Yeah, yeah.
Stan would puke whenever he was around
Wendy,
Wendy, yeah.
Yeah, gross out
Wendy
stuff.
Testaburger.
Right. Gross out stuff was absolutely mainstream.
Yeah, I guess
It made perfect
I guess
sense.
So.
It was Shock TV, Crash TV as it was. Yeah, they gave Draws a job on WWE.com for 8 or 9 years after that, and eventually let him go. They took care of him as well as they reasonably could, I think, but it was just a bad accident in the ring. Everyone in the wrestling business understands it's terrible, but it happens. And there you go. Poor Draws.
All right, Evan, let the randos commence.
Okay, so I'm gonna be going in order.
Okay.
I don't have like the timestamps or anything or
That's
what.
fine. We'll know who you're talking about.
I should have been more specific about this one. I just wrote, "Who's the mask guy?"
Golga?
Oh, okay.
Was he
maybe,
wearing
Golga.
a South Park shirt?
maybe,
Big fat guy came in like
fat.
third.
That's John Tenta, who was Earthquake when at a better time.
Yeah.
He was
in his
awesome.
career. Yeah. What was the Golga gimmick exactly?
He was just one of the guys in the oddities. He was supposed to be like some kind of freak show. They never really fleshed it out. It wasn't very well thought out.
They liked Insane Clown Posse.
And
Yes.
South Park.
Right, they edited out for him and for Kurgan, the enormous guy in the tie-dye T-shirt. They edited out their music and edited it in something generic. Their music was an original track by the Insane Clown Posse, who originally took their group to the ring, rapping it live. ICP has been in every major wrestling company over the last 30 years.
WWF, WCW, TNA, and Ring of Honor were all graced by the Juggalos Supreme.
I would imagine that all Juggalos are wrestling fans.
Yeah,
Or at least like a 90%.
They run their
yeah.
own wrestling company as well called Juggalo Champion. Now it's called Juggalo Championship Wrestling. It was called Juggalo Championship Wrestling, and they have a good reputation in the business. They pay their guys. They know it's tough. They wanted to originally be wrestlers, and rap kind of happened. It's like, I don't know. The ICP is an interesting case.
Whoop whoop, my ninjas.
Yes.
I will say I will say in general. Actually, this is nothing against ICP specifically. I would say I'm pro ICP. They seem to be a positive force in the world for the most part. But I do hate that the late 90s was like the time that I was in high school and the time that you sort of are most imprinted upon by pop culture. Because like 1998 to 2007 was really the low point for like American culture. Like maybe not society, like maybe things were worse in like, the 1800s, don't get me wrong, but just in terms of like what the dominant culture was, it's a dark fucking time, man. A really, really bad, dumb time. All right, I take it Gilbert is a mocking of Goldberg.
Yes.
Exactly
Yes,
what he
okay.
did. Dwayne Gill, who was a perennial jobber for the WWF, had this great moment in his career where he got to be Gilbert. And he comes out and they have the little sparklers instead of the big fireworks for him. But they still put him out with fire extinguishers like they would Goldberg.
Yeah, and spliced into his own theme music is a couple people apathetically just going, Gilbert, Gilbert, instead of the Goldberg chants.
He was the light heavyweight champion for like a year.
Yeah, well, they stopped using him with the belt on him, and he would tour the indies and defend it so he could do that act around. And then they wanted the belt back, so they had him drop it on TV. But yeah, he was a popular character for a little while.
I wanted him to win. I was so disappointed when he got eliminated. The Decker from my Shadowrun campaign shows up.
The Decker.
He had
from
blue hair.
Oh, the Blue Meanie.
The Blue Meanie.
Oh, okay, there we go.
I can't believe they signed that guy. Honestly,
Years late. Oh, no, wait. They signed him. Right. He was in the
there
job
then,
squad.
Yeah, he was in the job squad.
So he's supposed to be like one of the Yellow Submarine villains?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
So the original idea behind the Blue Meanie character was an ECW character, and there was Raven, who was like the wrestling embodiment of a selfish grunge Generation Xer. And then he had his sidekick, Stevie Richards, who was an uncool guy who thought he was cool but didn't quite get it. Like Raven would wear like a Megadeth t-shirt, and then Stevie Richards would wear like a Winger t-shirt cut with his abs hanging out. And then Stevie Richards' sidekick was supposed to be the Blue Meanie, who was supposed to be the worst sidekick of all time. Raven would tell Stevie to do something, then Stevie would tell Meanie to do something, then Meanie would be like, "I'm going to take over the world," and that would be hilarious.
I mean, the Blue Meanies are like a Yellow Submarine reference,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
What celebrated porn actress did he marry?
Jasmine St. Clair.
Jasmine
They've been divorced.
St. Clair.
They weren't married very long, but that's who you're thinking
I was
of.
going to say,
Yeah.
like, I feel like she can have much higher aims.
He
than-
lost a lot of weight for a while and looked pretty good, and then as soon as they got divorced, he gained all the weight
And I
back.
mean, by celebrated porn actress, she was in like
She
really
was in.
trashy
She was
porn.
in the original Sluts, Butts, and Housewives. Remember, we passed around the VHS of number 2.
Yes, I do. Of course, I remember that.
I
My,
eventually tracked down number 1, also still in high school.
And she was in like
And she was in that.
she was in like one of those one of the many like world's biggest gangbang.
Well, yeah, she set some records.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah,
which
she's
her
and the Blue
sure
Meanie.
did.
Her and the Blue Meanie ran an independent company called a 3PW, I think, for a few years around here when the indies, like in the early 2000s, were still kind of cooking. I heard a story, and I can't remember who told it, but I heard a story where they had Virgil on a show. and Virgil was going to change, and he was a little uncomfortable changing because she was there in the room, and he didn't want to like get naked in front of like a woman, didn't want to offend her, was his deal. And they told him who she was, and he was like, what? And then it's like he went over and talked to her for a second, and then came back, and then just took his pants off and started changing. Like, ain't nothing she hasn't seen before.
I will say I am friends with her on Facebook from
Are you
like
now?
that short period of time where before the celebrities had like celebrity pages that you would just like.
Right.
And I don't know, I guess I added her. And last year she wished me happy birthday.
Oh, that's
Wow,
nice.
Yeah.
that's
There
very
you go.
nice.
Thank you, Miss St. Clair.
She wants your ding dong, Ben.
Well, if that's the case,
Don't
Yeah.
take this the wrong way, but I'm sure she's got access to like a lot of ding dongs.
But she wants
That's-
Ben's
I
ding
know.
dong.
No, I think she wants my chingle money.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
I
don't know.
I was like, is that the
Ding
sound your ding dong
dong.
makes? Because that
You
is
should
not
see a
healthy.
doctor.
And
Yeah.
not in a bad way.
It doesn't
she's,
make a normal ding dong sound like everyone else's.
she's happy. She still has some fans, and
Yeah.
would like to, make sure.
Yeah.
be nice to them.
I
So who else
bust
you got?
I bust balls like I don't follow Jenna Fine on Instagram. Or no, on Twitter.
Ding dong.
All right. There's a guy. All right, I wrote Anne Rice wrestler. We figured that out.
Yeah, that's Gangrel.
All right,
That's
so
Gangrel.
the tie-dye World War I pilot.
Oh yeah,
The
that's
guy where-
Kurgan. He was another guy in the oddities along with Golga. He was awful.
He was awful, and it's like when you wear mismatched armor sets in an RPG because
Right.
it was just he had the leather cap and the boots of like an old timey fighter pilot, and then
The shirt
yeah.
gives me +5 charisma. Shut up.
So I think you skipped over this. So do you notice when Mabel comes out, he steals someone's spot. He beats up Mosh and comes out, and they're like, oh, I guess Mabel gets Mosh's spot. And this is a frequent thing that happens in the Royal Rumble. If you beat up the person on the way to the Royal Rumble and walk out yourself, you get their
you
spot.
get their spot. Oh, okay,
It's
I
never
guess I
actually.
didn't.
Oh, go ahead, Evan.
No, I was just gonna say I don't think he must have not stuck out to me. I didn't write anything
Like,
about him.
he was the big fat guy that got kidnapped.
Yeah, by the Undertaker.
In the giant black suit.
Oh, okay.
And then he becomes Viscera. And then when we watch Royal Rumble 2005, this is actually his second run as Viscera in the WWE. He's still got the name, but it doesn't really make sense anymore because there's no more Undertaker Ministry of Darkness.
Oh, you
which
got
he had been
you
part
got a
of.
quick taste of the full-on satanic Undertaker
Yo,
there,
how fucking
yeah.
scary
Oh
did he
yeah,
look,
so
man?
good.
with his whole crew coming out.
And so then they had to figure out what to do with Viscera, and so they made him the world's largest love machine.
And like I love watching them try to eliminate Viscera or Mabel or whatever he was called in the time in any Rumble because he's the most realistic big guy that you can't eliminate because anytime they try to push him over the ropes, he's like so gelatinous that he just kind of melts into the ropes instead. You can't really get him off center because he's just like the blob.
He had a match with Yokozuna,
Oh my god.
which is really something else. They body slam each other
yeah, they do. They are both
Damn.
big enough to really do it.
and agile enough to
Yeah.
get up for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it for people I didn't recognize. I will say I still don't fully understand Gold Dust.
You're not supposed to.
We'll have to do a Goldust
We-
episode.
We will, yeah.
The commentator makes a delightfully frightened noise when Kane comes out. He definitely makes it like Kane.
When Kane comes out and then they come back to take him back to the mental hospital and he just beats up all the orderlies and then just leaves. It's like, why did you even come to the Royal Rumble? You're just leaving now.
We should mention Kane was in all three of these Royal Rumbles.
Yeah.
He still has the record for most eliminations across Royal Rumbles.
Like in total.
In total, he no longer has the record for eliminations in a single match. I think
Yeah,
Reigns
I think Roman took that
He
one.
did.
beat him
yes.
for that, but he still has the cumulative eliminations
I
record.
spend every Rumble hoping Kane's going to come out at some point just to eliminate a few people and then leave.
Did you notice that Mark Henry was referred to as sexual chocolate Mark Henry
Yes.
in this one?
Yeah.
That was his deal
That was
at the time.
He was.
He was a ladies' man when he was a young man. He was known as being a ladies' man, so they put it on screen, and it worked. He got over with it. It hid the fact that he wasn't a very good wrestler yet. He had a program with China, and they were like dating, and then they were feuding, and
Chyna is in this Rumble as the first ever woman to enter a Royal
Yeah,
Rumble.
yeah. I feel like she
Yes.
got very shortchanged, but it was still impressive to see her come out.
they brought her out at number 30. It was
She
just
got
fun.
to eliminate Mark Henry.
Right,
She did,
eliminated
yes.
Mark
Before she got
Henry.
thrown out. She had apparently won a corporate Rumble in order to get the spot.
Right.
Something called the corporate Rumble that I guess Vince McMahon put together. I was wondering, I think that the corporate Rumble might have been Vince's actual first match. But this is his first real performance because he comes out with his shirt off and everyone is shocked by his physique because he always hid it under his suit all those years. So this is the first taste we really get of Vince in the ring. So so let's maybe tell the story of the whole thing with him and Austin. They first of all, before the match starts, Howard Finkel, the ring announcer, goes on very long-windedly about the rules. And Jerry the King Lawler sort of chides him for it on commentary. But the whole point of that was so that the live audience, it would be very clear to the live audience that when Vince and Steve Austin fall out of the ring but don't go over the top rope, they're still in the match. So that happens early on. They brawl all the way to around the concession stands and then eventually into the women's bathroom where there's an ambush set up for Austin of the corporation. They all beat him down badly enough that he's taken into an ambulance and taken away from the arena. Then, much later in the match, the ambulance returns with Austin behind the wheel.
Right. He comes back in as they're throwing Mabel into the car to kidnap him.
Right. That was a nice little that's why the camera was on outside.
As opposed to the Rumble with Roman Reigns, where he walks to the back on his own power and they don't show anything. They show Austin getting strapped to the gurney, loaded into the back of the ambulance and coming out. And instead of just running out like nothing went, nothing is wrong with him, Austin, like you said, drives the ambulance back himself because he hijacks the ambulance because he's so determined to win the Royal Rumble. No, he's so determined to beat the hell out of Mr. McMahon.
And once again, it's not a huge difference between the two stories, but just there's a handful of details that make it so much more interesting. Even if they had to pull Reigns out on a stretcher and then he came back still attached to the stretcher or something,
Yeah.
just something, literally something.
And instead of it might have been the original idea to have Vince at 30 where he would have this incredible advantage.
Yeah.
But then they thought, no, let's have him fight Austin the whole time, which was cool. And then in the 2016 Royal Rumble, what did they do? They had Triple H come out at 30.
At 30, right.
And just win.
win.
And that's
I loved Vince on commentary getting more and more nervous as nobody could beat Austin. Come on, damn it, I don't care. Just somebody. Come on, Owen,
we've talked about how, part of the challenge that wrestling faces, part of the challenge that any, art form where you're doing things that take an hour long or more face is, how do you organize it? How do you create a through line? How do you do stuff? And the fucking Vince Austin through line was so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to go away from it, come back to it, go away from it, come back to it. I thought it was really wild. I do have a couple questions, which is, one, I feel like Billy Gunn should have more ass-themed moves. He doesn't have any moves
He
that
had
have
the Fame Asser.
That's about it.
What is that a play on?
Famouser,
It's a pun. It's just a bad one.
yeah, it's really
Wow,
bad.
that's
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
no good.
bad.
Did you notice Godfather with his hose?
Yes, I
Yeah,
did.
that was a thing.
Different
that they
time.
did.
Different
Yeah.
time, certainly.
Very much. I mean, you're-
Oh,
Worse time.
You remember how big the idolized pimps were.
Oh, dude, I remember
Yeah.
that movie American Pimp. I
Yeah.
I loved that movie when I was 20.
It was
I
very
thought
interesting.
it was it was interesting. It is funny how in retrospect because at the time it came out and people said to the directors you guys really kind of put the pimps in a very positive light, and the directors were like, "What? I mean, we have them,
Hey,
admitting
pimping ain't
to-
easy, bro.
They were like, oh, they admit to doing all these bad things or whatever. If you watch that movie now, it is like propaganda for pimps. Like that is very. It's
What
very
pimps
literally-
do specifically is that they like charisma you into thinking that they're
Yeah.
in the right. So I could see how that would happen if like you spend all day talking to pimps. You think they're fine,
Yeah,
right?
they're funny
They're fun.
people. I'm hanging out.
They dress in
yeah.
an interesting fashion, you know.
Another thing I want to point out about this Rumble, X-Pac comes out, and they mention that at 210 pounds, he's the lightest Royal Rumble competitor ever at that point. And
Wow, that was a lie because Gilbert came out earlier.
That's right. Yeah, wow. I mean, I was going to say now we
Yeah.
have, people
now it's
well
very-
under
yeah.
200 pounds.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to this later. Yeah.
Just it's the big cop man shows up to
Hey.
crush the rebellion.
Well, the big boss man was incredible.
Well, this is now
It
the
is.
corporate big boss man who has become private security for Vince McMahon.
Oh, yeah.
He's no longer serving the public
No.
to
He serves
the whatever
Vince.
extent he was before.
There's a passing reference made to I don't know which commentator it is, but one of them often refers to the status of one-legged men in ass-kicking contests.
Yes.
And he always posits it as a negative thing, and I just want to point out that I do feel like a one-legged man actually has a real benefit in an ass-kicking contest because that leg is going to be in much better shape than any two-legged person's leg. Now, are there questions about how they're going to leverage themselves on the ground and get that sort of force moving? Yes. But I think just on a individual like muscle development level, a one-legged man's leg is going to be far superior for ass kicking.
We did watch a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest
But
for one of these episodes.
that was also very clearly set up to be unfair, though, because Vince McMahon is twice the size of that one-legged man.
Fair enough.
You got it.
that sounds like a JR-ism, was it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then I guess the thing that I did not care for about this match is I feel like it's a pretty classic example of fridging a female character. That China comes out, gets an impressive spot, throwing Mark Henry over. That's a big deal. It's a historic thing. Then she gets thrown out, and that is used to give Triple H the emotional anger charge he needs to carry on to victory.
Right. It was
Well, okay. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say right. It was a total novelty. She was there. It wasn't like
Yes.
It was very empowering to see a woman in the Rumble, but like she was treated once she got in like a novelty.
Yeah.
What I remember from that moment is Austin throwing her out and the announcers being like, Austin doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. He'll kick your ass anyway.
Yeah, that's not the
Which
angle
that
you wanted
has-
to go.
That
Yeah.
aged poorly.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's very
Accurate
dark,
statement.
dark foreshadowing.
That's really...
Oh.
So should we move on to the next Rumbles? The pile of entertaining.
I think Evan can't wait to get 05 out of the way.
Oh,
do
this
all
was
Okay, so Royal Rumble 2005 came in a very interesting time for the WWE. They were in the middle of rebuilding, and in many ways, they did not have a number one guy. Triple H was there. He was starting to kind of step aside. They kind of tried with Eddie and Benoit for a little bit, but it didn't quite
They
happen.
tried with Orton too before realizing Orton's calling was as a motherfucker heel.
Yeah, most of the year it looked like they were angling to put Orton over huge at WrestleMania, and he was not getting over as the young babyface they wanted him to. So earlier on this card, he's defeated pretty thoroughly in a world title match by Triple H, and it was clear that he wasn't going to WrestleMania.
So Triple
However,
H had this stable that Orton was a part of originally called Evolution with Ric Flair and Batista. And everyone thought that the member of Evolution who was going to rise to superstardom was going to be Orton. But then the crowd started to respond more favorably to Batista.
Yeah.
And so they began to tease dissension between Batista and the rest of Evolution. And we see that play out a little bit here.
The crowd ate it up every time they started to allude to it. They were like, oh, yeah, this is the guy we want. And Vince was down. Batista was a huge, jacked dude. Exactly what he wants.
I think Batista can actually use his traps as traps. Like, I think he can trap small animals between his shoulder.
Yeah. But it was clear to all of us that Batista and John Cena, by this point, it was clear to all of us that Batista and John Cena were both going to challenge for the world titles at WrestleMania. The question was who was going to win the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, which one of them was going to end up being a bigger star. It was Batista until it was John Cena. And at this point, it was Batista.
You see, when I watch this match, I see America desperately trying to understand, make sense of the Iraq War. That's really what I see in this Royal Rumble. There's two big things. We'll deal with the more minor one, which is the French guy comes out,
Rene Dupree,
and we hate him. And I know it's like, and I was trying to remember. I was like, because I know, it's always the thing. Like America, we don't like France, even though we wouldn't be a fucking country without France. So it's sort of ridiculous.
Yep.
But then I was like, oh right, we hated France because they were right about the Iraq War, and they wouldn't want to join us. And then Jericho gets a little what I call Quebecer revenge by throwing him out, which is just what I imagine what all people from Quebec want to do to all French people.
Jericho is not from Quebec. He's from Manitoba.
He's from Winnipeg, you idiot.
Oh, well.
That's an actual Jericho.
That's a Jericho line. He grew up on Long Island,
I'm not actually calling you an idiot, Evan. I'm sorry you didn't have context.
I guess I
he
just
was actually
assumed.
born in Long Island and then grew up in Canada.
Really? I thought his father was one of the New York
Wow.
Rangers while he was a kid on Long Island. I'm not sure. He's had a very interesting life.
Yeah, which is not something you can usually say about people from Long Island.
Right.
Because it sucks there. At me. I lived there for 6 years.
You did. You hated it every day.
He's finally starting to unrepress the memories in therapy.
I do miss that fucking pizza place in Copiague. I can't remember what it was. It was really good. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It's closed now, don't worry.
But yeah, so Ben texted me, hey, sorry about the Muhammad Hassan stuff. I forgot about this.
I had forgotten
I
that
had too,
happened
yeah.
completely.
And I got that 10 and I was like, oh my, what could this be? Because it is rare. One thing that doesn't happen on this podcast a lot is you guys apologizing to me.
I apologize for
watching-
nothing.
All the horribly offensive things in all of these in the WWE history, this is really ugly.
Because that was the thing.
It
This
is, yeah. No, it's terrible.
I was used to, like we've watched some of the older stuff, and there's I'm used to the misogyny, I'm used to the covert, like the racism, but it's all covert, right? It's all sort of coded. And this, as far as I could tell, so I don't know if there was another reason that, like, at one point they randomly, seemed to divide up into two teams.
That was Raw versus SmackDown.
They had, just for the
okay.
last few years, really went all in on the brand split, and the Rumble is one of the few places people from different brands got to fight. So the Raw side and the SmackDown side faced off, and then they were united in hatred
And this year
for
was
Muhammad Hassan.
And this year was particularly a Raw versus SmackDown year, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Very
And
much
man,
so.
was Luther Reigns out of place with the other 9 guys in that
Oh, yeah.
face-off. It was like Benoit and Jericho and
yeah.
RVD.
And Rey
and,
Mysterio.
Rey Mysterio.
and Ed, Shelton Benjamin.
He
And
sucks
Luther
even
Reigns.
more. He sucks even more than his nephew. And I didn't realize there was a Raw versus SmackDown thing. I was just like, oh, they're dividing randomly into sides. I don't understand this.
No, there was
and
no method to it.
And then Muhammad Hassan comes out and they unite together and then he acts like he's going to pray or something, and then they pick him up.
He
and
does
they throw
the
him
full-on I'm a Muslim, everybody. He's wearing, I don't know what you call it.
I forget the head. I really should know what
He's
that's
Italian,
called.
by the way.
And
Yes,
then-
He's
yes.
actually Italian.
He is not
Yeah, he's-
Middle Eastern in any way. He was
but
just, his
they
name is
gang
Kopani,
Yeah.
I believe.
They very visibly gang beat him.
Yes.
It's like the 10 of them all stomp him in unison. And it's all some of the most beloved characters.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
it really puts a
Luther
bad
Reigns.
taste in your mouth after that. Like, damn, my God. it's hard to cheer for these guys after they did that. And then they deport him from the ring.
Yeah.
Like, they all pick him up and just chuck him out.
And I read that, especially, like, now knowing the Raw SmackDown context, it's still a horrifically racist moment, but I also was interpreting that as like, oh, so it's a metaphor about how we were divided and we all need to unite.
Yes.
To defeat
Americans, Canadians, black, white, Mexicans,
Yeah.
right? Everybody against this kind of guy. Yeah.
Let me give you the context of the actual Muhammad Hassan angle, because it is more complicated than, hey, look, I'm a Muslim, hate me. And this could have been done very well, but the people in the WWE have no sense of subtlety or detail. Anyway, they start doing vignettes, and he starts doing promos about himself and his life. And he doesn't have any kind of like non-American accent because, I mean, once again, he was Italian, but Italian-American. But the story was he grew up in America. He was born in America. He always identified himself as an American. Nobody ever really second-guessed it. Till 9/11 happened. Then all of a sudden, everybody seemed to hate him, and he would get shit walking down the street, and he would get shit going into stores. And he hated the people that were doing that to him. He was just living his life, and all of a sudden, he's the bad guy. So they could have like really been interesting in that, but instead they just came out and had everybody be like, no, screw you, Arab, and then did that.
If they had made him a baby face.
Yeah, exactly.
With that character,
According
that
to-
would have been really
I would
interesting.
say if he had been Italian,
Yeah.
and then still was as racist towards him, and everybody came together to
Yeah.
throw him out of the ring, that's what America should be doing.
Now,
Doc's Italian, and I'm looking at him while I'm saying that.
I'm also part Italian, Evan.
yeah.
Okay, well, I
you're in the
can
corner.
only look in one direction at a time.
It's
And
cool.
that sounds like a
Yes.
personal problem.
It is. I personally have a problem with Italians. is what
That's
I'm
your
saying.
inferior Celtic blood that allows you to only look in one
I'm gonna hit you
direction
with
at
a
a
loaf.
time.
I'm gonna
I
hit
just-
you with a loaf of bread in your sleep.
So when my
Look,
grandfather...
Italians are the ones that built a wall between them and the Celts, okay?
I
like,
am-
they're the ones that
I
couldn't
am-
handle it.
I
the
am
Celts
gonna
were coming.
beat you with the loaf of bread in your sleep.
So my grandfather, when he came here from the old country, said he only knew
Garrot you with spaghetti. Sorry.
that you can't go out with spaghetti;
Yeah, you
it
can
breaks.
try.
He said the only phrase that he knew when he came here as a young teenager was, "And what are you gonna do about it?" So he got into a lot of fights, and that's what I'm going to quote to you. And what are you gonna do about it?
No, it's
All right, now that we've
yeah.
offended everyone.
No, we've just
Now that
offended
we've
Italians.
now that we've lost Lord Omelette as a patron already due
Yeah.
to this offense.
Boy.
And then look, it's okay. Italians are white now.
Lord
so
Omelette,
we
if you're
can-
Italian, I'm sorry for Evan's words.
in all honesty, it is. I will also say the idea that like it could have been handled well if everybody involved had been a different person with a different agenda.
Right.
Then that's I don't know how.
It's not a defense.
Also,
It's more like, man, they really could have done something interesting narratively with this, but they
No, that
didn't.
is
They
true.
just did the same old stupid thing.
It's hard to think about other parts of this match, and I really felt like this totally
yeah.
ruined it for you. But did you watch the vignettes at the beginning with them picking numbers and the whole thing with Eddie Guerrero
Yes,
and Ric Flair?
I thought that was great.
Did you catch Captain Charisma's rap?
Oh yeah, against John Cena.
I saw
no,
a
not
guy
with-
come out and rap. Yes.
No, that was
No,
probably
that was-
Cena
no, that was
himself.
oh, okay.
Yeah, Christian
maybe-
freestyles against.
Tomko, give me a beat.
No.
Yeah,
Oh no, I don't think I saw it.
That's okay.
But they were playing up the whole "I lie, cheat, and steal" thing with Eddie Guerrero.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he steals Ric Flair's number, and then they make him give it back.
And that's notable because Ric Flair comes out at number 30 and Eddie comes out at number 1.
Right.
Yeah.
So they almost swapped those two things. I want to point out, I loved the look on Kurt Angle's face as he was coming to the ring. He looked pissed that he didn't already win the
Yeah.
Rumble.
Oh, and
Which made it better when he was eliminated in a minute.
Well, that's the thing. I got upset when
Yeah.
they eliminated him so quickly, but it was funny.
This was building up to his match with Shawn Michaels
Yes.
that we watched at
Right.
WrestleMania.
They
that
eliminate each other.
year. Yeah, they eliminate each other, and then they have this incredible match at WrestleMania. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say this was a Rumble where I felt like once it was down to the last like 4 or 5 guys, great match.
I mean,
really enjoyed the end. I knew Ray wasn't gonna get it, but I was rooting for him the whole time until he got.
I think he wins the next year. right?
no, he had won. Yeah,
He wins
that's right. He wins the
2006,
next
yeah.
year.
I
He
was
wins the
really
next
sad
year.
that we watched 2004, And I was like, oh, or no,
Whoa.
2005. And I was like, oh, I hope Ray wins. And then we watched 2007, and they're like, Ray won last year. And I'm like, why aren't we watching this one?
2004 is the Cursed Rumble.
But
Yes.
I do love the beginning of this because we get Benoit and Eddie for quite a few minutes.
Oh, the beginning of this one.
They start.
Oh, God,
They start off. Then we get Daniel Puder, who comes out, and they
Oh.
beat the shit out of Daniel Puder. And then Hardcore Holly comes out, and he's known for liking to beating up rookies. And so they all beat up Daniel Puder. Daniel Puder is a really interesting case. He was an MMA fighter who was on their reality show Tough Enough and won, I think.
He won over The Miz, who I had called as being a huge star at the time.
There was an infamous instance where they, for some reason, decided to let them shoot wrestle with Kurt Angle, and Puder almost tapped him out. He put him in a Kimura lock, and Angle was smart enough to roll Puder on his back, so the referee counted to 3, and Puder wasn't smart enough to kick out. But, Angle at the time was having horrible neck problems. He was in no condition to shoot fight anybody, and it was really came close to exposing him in a really bad way. So yeah, Puder is not very well liked, I think, in the wrestling business.
No, definitely not.
My notes about him are, what is this guy? He has the face of a small child pasted onto a man.
I think he watched one of our Instagram stories though, or I think I texted you about that.
That'll show you on what level of business he's on.
And then, directly after they eliminate Daniel Puder, who deserves it, out comes the Hurricane, who never deserved it.
I will say Hurricane sells really well. I really like
does,
the way
yes.
that he I don't know, I just liked his presence in the ring. I thought he
Hurricane
was
is one of my
cool.
favorite
Yeah.
wrestlers of all time.
We see him as Gregory Helms in the 07 Rumble.
Yeah, that's the same guy. Did you remember Gregory Helms? A dude named Gregory Helms in the 07 Rumble comes out and is
Yes.
very generic for about 6 minutes and then gets eliminated.
Yeah, they took away
Same
everything
dude.
interesting
Same
about
dude.
him.
Yeah.
I remember being confused because for a second I was like, wasn't that the name of the actor, dancer guy? But that was Gregory Hines I was thinking of.
You got a parade of randos for this one?
No, not really. I mean, there were a parade of randos, but they were not randos.
Did you
that
notice
stuck out
Simon Dean, the fitness guru?
To me. Oh yeah, he actually was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love him.
had a
Oh,
lot of fun.
that is Nova. He's awesome.
I love how he comes out and starts doing squats, and the commentators like, you had all day to warm up, and now you're warming up. Come on, man.
As fun
And
as
our friend Kenzo Suzuki.
well, yes,
Who's terrible at
who
everything.
his character is that he's Japanese, which I feel like that's Vince telling him to do that.
His
That
character
sucks.
is he's Japanese and tall.
I did say, as much as I liked the fitness dude, I also did not understand the character of the coach.
That's
No.
Jonathan Coachman. He was an announcer. He's on
He still is.
ESPN now.
No. He's now back with the WWE.
Oh, right. He's back with WWE.
He was on ESPN for several years afterwards. He was like, people were supposed to not like him. He came in, hung on to the bottom rope for 10 minutes, and then eventually got eliminated. I never liked him as an announcer or a competitor.
I just didn't understand. They were like, he's the coach, and he had a shirt that said, I'm the coach. And I was like, all right, this is a weird character, but I guess I could see maybe. So, and then he just has nothing. There's just a nothing presence.
One last. Paul London. Did you notice the guy named Paul London? Little skinny guy. He was a great indie wrestler for years. They signed him. He gets eliminated with a crazy clothesline that turns him totally inside out. Like he basically does a shooting star press from the apron to the floor off this clothesline. Craziest Rumble elimination ever, basically. They still replay it now, even though he hasn't been in the company for many years.
I mean, Cayente in what was it, 2000? Where
Oh, yeah.
one of them falls on their head. It's a little crazier.
Taka
But I
does
think that
the
was a
full gainer.
run-in, wasn't it?
Might have been.
Yeah.
But they replayed that a million times, too.
It's Taka. Taka is who I was thinking. Thank you.
But before we get right into the finish, which I want to talk about, I want to ask, we watched the 92 Royal Rumble with Ric Flair going. So what do you think of old man Ric Flair coming in at number 30?
You know, as old and decrepit as he looks, he also looks like he could have still done an hour.
He could have.
Like,
he
like
was
I-
an active competitor. He was great.
He'd still do it now
That's-
if they let him.
That's
Yeah.
the,
It wouldn't be pretty to watch, but he'd try.
I feel like Ric Flair, when he retired, it must have just been his family pressuring him, because I'm willing to bet he physically absolutely could still do all of the things that he could do when he was 25.
I mean, he got a pacemaker, right?
Just recently, he says, they say there's no reason I shouldn't live another 30 years. He's in his late 60s. And I believe him. Hey,
Absolutely.
why not?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I liked that, they clearly had would bring him back to be like a bit more of a novelty character. Like nobody was necessarily expecting him to win.
Yeah. At the time, he was a regular wrestler on television.
Yeah.
Weekly.
Yeah, he had held the tag titles, stuff like that.
Him and Batista won the tag championships together as kind of a mentor kind of deal. It was very good. He went all the way through until him and Shawn Michaels had his retirement match.
Just makes me more excited for the eventual Ric Flair episodes we do because he is and I gotta say this is something I keep thinking about as we go through this is the difference between the very old school kind of wrestling characters and the characters that you and the more modern characters, modern really being any time from like the 80s onwards, were just the characters who the difference is being that there are characters who you can describe in a pitch, describe in a handful of sentences, and then guys like Ric Flair the Nature Boy Woo, like that's not it. That's not the description. You can't. There is no describing this.
They call it the dirtiest player in the game is probably his. What did Quackenbush call it? His individuating value statement.
Value statement. Yeah. So the finish though, with Batista and John Cena go out at the same time. Everybody involved will tell you that wasn't supposed to happen, but they play it off so well, and it seems like it was played off like it was supposed to happen.
It was so well done, though. Like, it doesn't look like, it's not like Bret Hart and Lex Luger where they hug each other and very carefully go over the top rope at the same time. Batista tries to powerbomb Cena out. Cena reverses it. They very quickly and violently flop out of the ring and happen to hit at just about exactly the same time.
My only nitpick is if you slow-mo that fall where they claim both of their feet hit the floor at the same time. Technically, one of Cena's feet lands on Batista's back. And that's just me being a bitch about it. Not like anything that really should be nitpicked. That's just me being overly critical for the sake of amusement.
So they're running out of time on the broadcast at this point.
Oh my God, this Rumble went, not to cut off Doc, but yes, this Rumble went notoriously long. Like they were about to, and this was some WCW shit. Like WCW used to get their pay-per-views cut off all the time because they couldn't manage time. WWE is always really good about that shit. Like
now,
but they were about to, I remember like when the Rumble ended and like when it went off the air, they had like 2 minutes left.
Nowadays that it's all on the network, they can go as long as they fucking want.
And they do.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're debating in the ring what to do, and Vince comes down himself. Apparently he had been sitting right beyond the curtain as he does producing the show, and he's angry. And so here's
do you notice him roll into the ring and sit down?
I was wondering about that. And I was thinking the only thing it could be is that even if you're Vince McMahon, once in a while, you're going to do a simple movement and just fucking really pull a muscle or like fuck yourself.
Muscle.
And so it looked like he like got into the ring and I could, it must just be that he like fucking gave himself a Charlie horse.
He
was like,
tore both his quads.
What?
So I think with the
both of them.
I think isn't the story that he tore the first one when he got into the ring and he tore the second one trying to get out without help.
How do you? Oh my God!
And he doesn't sell it. He's just like, well, I can't stand, but I still have to tell you what to do.
He looks like a little more concerned than normal. I just thought it was like some I guess Vince was like taking acting lessons
No, it
around
was
this
a
time.
problem. He was in a wheelchair for months.
Yeah.
You know,
he tore both his quads.
That fucking terrifies me, honestly, that, like, Vince McMahon, who is in better shape than I will ever be at any point in my life, it can go into the ring and just fucking tear his goddamn quads.
He had just been sitting backstage for hours watching the show, and then it was like, oh, I got to get to the ring. And so he hadn't stretched or anything, and he just,
He was already, like, almost 60, and, like, it just was the wrong movement. Twice, apparently.
Oh.
Anyway, then they restarted, and Batista wins, and that was great. And Batista went on. Both Batista and Cena went to WrestleMania and won their respective world titles.
And I think Batista was the right option out of the two of them that specific year.
Cena eventually pulled past Batista, but at that moment, we thought Batista was going to be great. We loved him. He was like, he wasn't like the chaotic badass that Steve Austin was, but he was like a mean kind of killer that we all liked. And then they immediately made him super bland babyface, and it was, the same story as always. And then eventually he left, mostly because he didn't like the creative stuff. He was like, I'm gonna go act in movies, and now he's Drax the Destroyer, and a huge movie star.
Also, Cena was able to pull ahead just because of the nature of, and I hate to say it, Cena was much younger than Batista.
That's true.
I think Batista needed to win this Rumble largely because he needed the storyline reason to fight Triple H at Mania.
Right, that's true as well.
So that he wasn't, he didn't turn on him just like, Andre the Giant, like, you never gave me a title shot, Hulk Hogan. It was just like, hey, I won the Rumble. I'm going to cash in my title shot. Too bad, Triple H.
It was when he came out, Laura turned to me and said, wow, I thought those traps were like prosthetic makeup in the Guardians movies, like to make him look like more buff and alien.
No. Not only does he have the genetics for it, he's one of those guys who grew up much like The Rock. He was really poor, except he was poorer than The Rock and was like, well, I can still lift heavy things every day.
Oh, yeah.
And so he did until he looked like that, and it did very well for him.
Was raised by a single mother who he is incredibly pro-LGBTQ because his mother was a lesbian.
Oh, wow.
And he will actually fight anyone who says anything negative.
In the horrible suburbs of D.C.
Yeah,
I do follow him on social media, and he seems to be a good guy, and not in a way where
he's a good dude. Yeah.
Where like The Rock's presence is a little manufactured. I mean, I still follow him and enjoy him; it's great.
Sure.
But like Dave Bautista seems like it's just fucking him.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
He knows the struggle, and the thing about The Rock, I mean, I love The Rock too, but as much as he did have like a struggle coming up, as soon as he came in, he was super successful at very young.
Yeah.
Batista at this point was already like, it's not that he's old, but he was already in his early 30s. He didn't start at 21 and immediately be a big success. He had to pull himself up.
And also for him to go into acting, like he might have been like relatively popular in the WWE.
Yeah.
But I like it does not seem to me like he had the outside knowledge and stardom of like the tiny handful of other actors who've gone on to do because Hogan was way bigger, The Rock was way bigger, Cena was way bigger, and that's this. So he seems like he was way like I remember when they cast him in Guardians, it was this like stunt casting. People were like, but Dave Bautista, what?
Batista?
And he's a fucking great comedic actor. Honestly,
we didn't even think he was that good of a wrestler.
Yeah, honestly, in those movies, he's funnier than Chris Pratt.
He's very funny. He plays it. Yeah. He knows how straight to play it.
Yeah.
Also,
nothing would go over my
head.
Also,
he comes off as a much better dude than Chris Pratt.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, Chris Pratt is really an example of what happens where you should have to struggle for like 30 years before you get that popular. Because if you only struggle for like 6 years and you get that popular, then you are going to become a sociopath.
Yeah, then you find Jesus and then become a sociopath.
Because you're also, from your perspective, you're like, I'm just like, oh, I'm fucking justified in everything that I do. Like, I must have just, it's survivorship bias where you're like, oh, I made it here. It must be because I'm just the best.
Okay, so
all right,
anyway,
moving
let's get
on
to 2007.
2007. Did you watch any of the vignettes for this one? Did you see Kelly, the exhibitionist? Who was, I think, still 19 or maybe 20 by then.
Yeah, they're making her say things like, I like balls, and she's like a baby.
These are the biggest balls I've ever held.
Yeah, she's like basically almost still a high schooler, and it's just creepy to watch.
I did not. I guess I
So
didn't.
this was all part of the ECW revival after WWE purchased them and started their own ECW TV show. So,
I noticed there were some ECW, like Tommy Dreamer and stuff.
So the so-called ECW extremists, as opposed to the WWE superstars, were involved in this Rumble. So it was 3 brands: Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. Unfortunately, most of the ECW guys were jobbers in this. They'd show them.
The only up-and-comer was CM Punk, and this is the first time I think we've actually seen CM Punk on this podcast.
No, we did Punk Bryan match.
Oh, that's right. We did the Punk Bryan match. Okay.
Oh wait, well that's coming. Actually, that hasn't come out yet.
Has that come out yet?
No, that hasn't come out.
Time travel.
We're in 3 different timelines on this podcast.
Yes.
We get Sabu, who immediately takes out a table, sets it up outside the ring, which adds a kind of cool element because now if someone gets eliminated on that side, they'll fall through the table.
Right.
And then he jumps in and does like a tornado DDT on Tommy Dreamer that he completely botches immediately. And he ends up getting chokeslammed by Kane through that table that he had set up.
Speaking of things we need to apologize for to Evan, who's properly horrified by everything, I'm very sorry that you had to hear Super Crazy, the Mexican luchador, come out to a theme song that started with the revving of lawnmowers.
Oh, is that? I
mentioned that
did
whole
not
thing.
hear his music. I must.
It
have,
goes.
like,
They used to. He was part of a group called the Mexicools, and they came to the ring on rideable lawnmowers.
Juan Deere
Christ.
lawnmowers.
And it was, it was just a thing for these young unknowns, right?
Sure.
Super Crazy, Juventud Guerrera, who was a huge star. These guys, I'm being sarcastic. These guys were giant luchador stars. They were in WCW and Psychosis, right? Yeah, and Psychosis. And they came to the ring. They were all unmasked. They tried to do promos in English, which they really couldn't. And Hoovy hoovied himself out of the business, which, if you know anything about Hoovy, he's a maniac. Super Crazy was very good. He was always over, and they just didn't know what to do with him.
He
Super Crazy
seems-
out of the three of them stuck around the longest.
It was at a time when they were still hung up over the fact that he couldn't really speak English, I think.
Right, I guess.
They wanted everybody to be able to cut promos in English.
Right, they
Nowadays,
didn't have
they
any
don't really care.
managers. Nowadays, they're more likely to just put you with a manager if you can't speak English, or just let you speak in your language. They have Asuka coming out now and just cutting promos in Japanese, and mainstream fans are like, I don't know what you said, but I believe her.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It makes because if you watch the greatest era of promos in wrestling is the '80s, right? For me,
Oh,
at
I'd
least
say
from
so,
what
for
I've
sure.
seen so far, and. If you watch classic Hogan promos or Randy Savage or anything, the words they're saying don't matter. There's no. It's what points are they making? They're just rephrase. It's like the things you say during sex. You're just rephrasing the same essential concepts.
We're having sex right now.
Yes, it's good. I'm glad that that's happening.
Yeah.
You seem great, and that's it's just a matter of it's how you say it. It's how it comes out. So yeah, fucking just let people cut promos in their native language because that's going to be so much more emotive and get the point across so much more to an English-speaking audience.
So I think this is your first taste of the Sandman. What did you think of the Sandman?
He's the kendo stick guy,
He
right?
Yes,
comes
that
out in the crowd.
Is he
popularized-
British?
No, he's from Philadelphia.
He had a very I didn't hear him talk or anything, but he had a very British energy to me. I don't know why.
He pulls out a
His real name is Fullington. Maybe his family is British.
To me, he's just had like a punk rock guy, like an old British punk rock guy kind of flavor.
He kind of does. I see it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, for sure. He's by far in the best physical shape of his career during this run. If you see him in ECW, you'd always have a big beer belly because he was always really drunk.
Well, before Steve Austin, he popularized drinking beer on his way to the ring. Actually, Austin would do it after the match at least. Sandman would chug a beer and smash it over to his head until he was bleeding. And there's this poor security guard right next to him who just gets showered in beer on his way down to the ring. He doesn't last very long in the match, but he gets to hit a bunch of people with that Singapore cane.
And is it not a kendo stick?
Well, it is a kendo stick. In ECW, they called it a Singapore cane because they wanted to take advantage of that news story about the kid who got in trouble for the gum, or I think it was graffiti maybe and they would cane you in Singapore. So they were like, oh yeah, they cane people in Singapore. Let's call it a Singapore cane.
That story has really paled in comparison to that guy who, the frat guy who stole a painting from a hotel in North Korea.
Oh, no.
And then died when they shipped him back to America. It's the whole thing.
If you find yourself in North Korea, first of all, you've already probably made a few poor life decisions.
Second of
Or
all,
you're-
don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything.
Or you're like a journalist who is who hopefully knows not to do that.
So what did you think of King Booker?
Oh, okay. All right. So I was trying to figure out because I'd seen Booker T before, and also just ephemerally I remember him from stuff you guys.
He was
would
a big
watch back
star.
in the day.
Still is a big star.
Yeah, he's a very emotive face, great eyes. I guess I needed more context. I didn't quite get the character.
He
the
won the King of the Ring, so he just became delusional. He came to believe that he was an actual king. To me, visually, he looks a lot like Koopa from the Mario games.
Yeah.
I guess I could see that. Yeah.
They paired him with his real life wife, Charmel.
You mean Bowser?
Yeah, Bowser Koopa, right?
Yeah,
Bowser.
Bowser. We used to call him King Koopa back in the
I didn't.
days.
I called him Bowser.
I think in the early days he was also
In the
referred
early
to as
days.
King.
In the
Koopa.
movie, he's King
Yes.
Koopa.
Yeah.
This was like Mario 1 and 2
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think we
one.
can all agree that the movie is canon. So
I think
yeah. It's
maybe
the
they
most
started calling
canon.
him Bowser in
100%.
3.
I think they called him
couldn't tell
Bowser
you.
in 1. We could look all of this up.
Anyway,
doesn't matter.
but the joke of it was that he's this guy from the street putting on airs of royalty, and there's definitely some racist connotations to that.
It's funny that the black guy thinks he's a king.
Right. Yeah. But he leaned into it
Oh,
and
yeah.
was
He was happy to get a
Pretty amazing.
WWE gimmick, and this is the only time he won the title in the WWE was as King Booker. And he kept elements of that in his character even when he stopped being King Booker. He always loved doing over-the-top stuff. He would call it Shakespeare, which is a term in wrestling for the stuff you do that's not the wrestling and not the talking, the physical stuff. And he was always very good at that. He has very long limbs, and he knows how to use them. And
it was his only world title run in the WWE.
Yeah.
Was as King Booker.
as opposed to the 5 runs he had in WCW, all within the span of 1 year.
This is
Right.
We'll talk about Booker a lot. We should do an episode
We should
on
do
Booker.
a Booker episode.
There's
for sure.
there's a very controversial match between him and Triple H from WrestleMania 18.
yeah, I will say, like, the notes I had for this match, first off, I was very tired when I was watching this match, and I slept through like the last 20 minutes and had to wake up this morning and watch it again and watch them again because I was like,
That's the best part of the
I
match.
was like, oh, can I get away with it? And then I imagined Ben yelling at me for not finishing it, so I finished it. And I'm glad I did, because the end of this match, like the end of the Royal Rumble, was great. This was another example where contained within an hour-long Royal Rumble was a great 20-minute match.
Exactly. That's why I love this Rumble so much. Is the last 10 minutes of that match. You think it's gonna be like the same like quick shit show it always is with the Final Four getting eliminated, like rapid fire. No, Sean and Taker both take a quick breather, get up and have a 10-minute match. That's amazing.
And it was a great match. Yeah.
Taker sits up and then Sean kips up.
Great
that was
moment.
that was such a great distillation of their characters.
Yep.
That's like the perfect visual metaphor. Honestly, my notes for this are pretty spare. I really just are the my question was, are the Hardys actual brothers?
Yes.
Yes, they were actually okay.
Did you notice all the stuff revolving around the concerto?
No.
So Edge, you really don't hear the announcers.
I
Really don't. I'm not judging you for it. It's interesting to me because you miss a lot of things because you don't hear the announcers.
I even like I go into it consciously thinking like I got to remember to listen to it. I got to remember to listen. And even like I'll be watching him with Laura and then she'll be like, haha, that's funny what they just said, and I have to rewind it because I don't know. I'm just
So
I think it also just comes from like never watching sports or wrestling, and so it just doesn't occur to me to listen to the
You
commentary.
tend to hear the commentary a lot more whenever we do stuff that isn't the WWE. Like their commentary is like their flavor of commentary, which generally like, and I don't blame you for this, it just passes through your head.
It really it just like because whenever I do focus on the commentary, it just doesn't seem like there's a reason I should be doing it.
So anyway, Edge and Christian, when they were a tag team, popularized this thing called the concerto, where they would simultaneously hit someone with a chair. And it's just a delightful pun.
In
is,
the
yeah.
head from opposite directions.
That's how you do a stupid pun. That's a good word.
And so at this point, there was a tag team with Edge and Randy Orton called Rated RKO. And they had their own version of the concerto, which they try to do to Shawn Michaels, I think, at the end. They try to do it to Undertaker, and Shawn saves Undertaker from it, eliminates Orton and Edge, and then we get the finale with Undertaker and Shawn.
And this was just such a great finale too. It's like both they kind of mirrored each other in ways, Taker and like HBK, because as far as their careers went, they were both kind of on their second wind. Like HBK had the full 4 years where he was retired completely and came back and was better than ever. Undertaker never went away, but like the Undertaker as a character changed drastically enough for long enough that it seems like he went away, you know?
I'm always amazed at how like quick and relatively graceful Taker is. Like for a guy his size, like I feel like he does not wrestle the same way that other guys that size wrestle.
And at this point too, he was like 41, 42 years old already. Yeah.
That's part of his mystique for sure.
It's like even at one point he like walks out onto like the middle of the ropes or some shit, and I'm like, that looks really fucking hard to balance, especially when you're a giant guy.
He floats.
These two comprise HBK and Undertaker comprise 2 out of 3 of my top 3 favorites of all time. Along with Chris Jericho.
So Viscera was the full-on the couch in this one. The world's largest love
Wait,
machine.
also wait. Okay, in the vignettes, Hornswoggle picks a number.
He does.
And we never see Hornswoggle in the actual
It might
match.
have been Finlay's number.
I think he was picking Finley's number.
Yeah.
Well, he picked a bad number
did.
for Finley.
But he's okay. So to go all the way back to the beginning of the Rumble, Ric Flair was number 1. And Finley, who was another older tough guy, was number 2, and they tough guy at each other for a while.
His name is Finley, and he loves to fight.
So Finley started his wrestling career in the 70s in England and in part of the British wrestling scene that was big at the time, different style.
God, how many
classic tough guy? Yeah.
I wonder how many characters in British wrestling have the same deal where they're just like, I'm Irish.
A lot.
They wouldn't let him bring his shillelagh into the ring.
Right, where you like to be.
I mean, it does seem like a clear violation of the rules.
It was the one weakness the great Khali had was Finley would tell the ref to look over there, and the ref would, and then he'd hit him in the face with the shillelagh.
But they let Sandman in with the cane.
The cane bends.
See, Khali to me as a big guy in a Rumble, as opposed to Mabel or Viscera, as you want to call him, as I already stated, is a guy who, like, I totally believe it would be way easier than it looks to eliminate him, because like he's so wobbly and his legs are so thin, you just gotta topple his center of gravity a little and he just falls out, and he can't even really like skin the cat because he's too tall and his legs just automatically hit the ground. Like, we're supposed to fear Khali for being so big, but I'm like, look at this, he can't bend his knees, come on, just tip him over.
I love that though he comes in at 29 and he eliminates a ton of people.
He doesn't. He comes in at 28. Miz is 29.
Miz is 29. And then they're like, who can stop Khali? And the lights go out and the gong hits and it's The Undertaker.
Might be the biggest crowd reaction I've seen yet to anything. The degree to which they lose their shit when that gong hits is incredible.
Speaking of Viscera, too, his elimination was kind of great, where there's all these guys trying to throw him out. Yeah. Shawn Michaels comes out. Has this whole sequence with Finley where strangely the camera is positioned such that it looks like the ring is empty because everyone is all over on one side trying to eliminate Viscera. Then once he gets Finley out, he sweet chin music's Viscera, and that is enough to allow everybody to throw him out.
Right.
Yeah, instead of having him, once again, as I reiterate, just melt as like a gelatinous blob into the ropes as everyone kind of pushes at him.
I want to note it with Shawn Michaels. He comes in and Bob Holly starts fighting with him immediately and like keeps fighting with him. And Shawn does not want to be like married to Bob Holly in this thing. He wants to fight guys who count. And he no-sold sells all of Holly's punches and starts throwing them back. And you can see Shawn be like, no, just sell for me. I'm a major player in this Rumble. I'm trying to do something here that counts. You wouldn't know anything about that, Bob, would you? And yeah, I know.
Oof.
Well, I don't like Bob Holly.
Neither do I.
CM Punk.
He was abusive.
Yes.
CM Punk looks a little bit like Mike Patton.
Yeah?
Famed singer Mike Patton.
CM Punk's gimmick when he started in WWE and ECW was terrible. They made him out to be like a jiu-jitsu Muay Thai expert, and he was obviously not one.
Yeah, not even a little.
He learned how to throw one high kick and one high knee.
But they don't even look like real martial arts strikes.
No, because he learned how to do it specifically for this gimmick. Like, I'll throw one kick, whoa, and he almost fell over every time he did it.
And we did eventually get to see him do some MMA years later.
Yes.
And that didn't go well at all.
It really didn't.
This also brought up, there was another guy involved in this who brought up some memories for me. You know, sitting high as fuck in Ben's house in the early 2000s, and I'm being subjected to all of this wrestling and generally not caring for it. But I remembered really liking Rob Van Dam.
That's because Rob Van Dam was amazing.
Yeah, and like he came out and I was like, "Oh, fucking right. I remember this guy." And like he did all this cool shit and I was just like, "Oh, we have to bump up the RVD episode because this is somebody who I actually like remember liking." I feel like I even requested you guys showing me a match or two of his. I think we watched some of the RV DVD.
Yeah.
At one point, which I will remember forever.
I think not too long from now, we're going to do a premium episode where we'll watch his classic match against John Cena.
Oh, at One Night Stand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, RVD is great. He was incredibly innovative. I was a huge fan of his. He's one of these guys that the more you start to care about the craft of pro wrestling, the less great he seems.
Like he kind of could do a lot of stuff that was visually impressive right away, but then like he actually didn't have great matches.
Yeah, he was very good, don't get us wrong, but like he's the kind of guy where when you're a teenager you think he's clearly the best wrestler in the world, and then when you learn more about the craft you see people who do. He ain't better than Ric Flair. Even though he can do way cooler stuff than Ric Flair, he ain't better than Ric Flair.
There are various reasons why he didn't become even bigger of a star than he was.
Yeah.
Well, he did win the WWF Championship finally, and then a few weeks later was arrested on the road with drugs in his car, which is not a good look.
We'll talk about all that.
He'll talk
stuff
about
at
all
the
that,
Cena
yes.
match, yeah.
All right, so do we have some final thoughts?
Oh, so it was interesting just to point out that Undertaker was at number 30, was the first guy at number 30 to actually win the Rumble, which you would have thought would have happened before.
Because you get to come in and everybody else is fucking wiped out. Like,
It's often somebody who drew a late number, but never 30 until this one.
It's funny, though, because they play it up as like a disadvantage when he comes out. Right. It's like, oh, he's at number 30. No one's ever won at number 30. It's like, yeah, but it's still an advantage.
Too, yeah.
So I know like Flair won that year that he was number 2.
3.
Has anybody at 1 or 2 ever won?
Yes.
Mysterio won at 2, and Chris
Vince
Benoit
was number 2.
won at 1. Oh yeah, and Vince also won at 2.
You know what? I'm gonna say it right now. This week might be the week that you guys win because I kind of want to just watch the Rumble where Ray wins because I love Rey Mysterio so much.
That was in between these two.
And you just told me he's in it the whole time?
The whole time.
He's in it the whole time?
Oh, and he doesn't get stretchered off for half of it. He's just hanging on.
I'm pretty sure, well, no, they couldn't have known.
Won in 95.
Yeah.
They're really lucky that they did that with Ray, because until that happened, Benoit not only had won it from the number 1 spot, but had the longest time ever of anyone in the Royal Rumble. And thankfully, they didn't have to sort of ad hoc give it to someone else because they had already given it to Ray.
2007 is Benoit's last Royal Rumble, and 2005 is Eddie's last Royal Rumble.
And
he
99
wasn't in 08?
is
Benoit?
Benoit was dead by
He
08.
died in 08.
No, he died in 07.
Pretty sure he died in 08.
I'm gonna fight Ben on this. Hold on.
look.
Betsy was right.
Betsy was right.
This premium episode is coming out on Wednesday. The mini-sode that's going to come out on Friday where we reflect on this, we will also have watched that Rumble. I'm going to make you guys watch one more Rumble because I want to watch the Ray one.
I'm down.
We're also gonna make you watch the new Rumble.
Well, yeah.
Right. Oh, my God. It never stops.
No, that'll be different because
Okay,
you're going to be with wrestling fans, and we're going to be like, Royal Rumble. Yeah.
That will be better, yeah.
He said as long as it's not his birthday, which it isn't, our friend DVS will roll through, and he's incredibly entertaining to watch wrestling with.
Oh, yes. I'm excited.
And I'm really trying to get him on this show.
He's a legit Twitter celebrity, so that'll be a big deal for us.
I think that
He's not being
Rumble...
sarcastic.
I think that Rumble will have happened
Yeah.
by the time this airs.
By the time this airs, yes.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting one.
Me too. I don't know who's going to win.
Have no idea. For the first time in many years, really have no idea who's going to win.
I'll say what I say every year until it fucking happens. Biggie Langston.
Biggie. There's no reason Biggie
There's
shouldn't
no
be
reason
the champion.
Biggie Langston shouldn't have literally every single title on the roster, including all of the women's titles, the cruiserweight title, all of the I just want Biggie to be draped in belts.
You want to
That'd be
make a
great.
pick, Doc?
Shayna Baszler.
For the
For the
women's
women's,
rumble.
I might
yeah.
pick a shame.
Yeah.
No, she's the obvious
The
pick
one
for the
I'm
women's.
the one I'm much more interested in. Yes.
Yes.
As far as the men's rumble go, I don't know.
Biggie
Roman,
Langston.
you know.
Biggie Langston.
I'm gonna say if he's in it, if he's not just in the title match,
Yeah.
Kevin Owens.
Okay, I can see them at any point just going with Owens. Yeah.
They should bring Cena back, or I don't know if he's left or if he's still around. And they could just have a match where him and Roman Reigns fight, and it'll be sort of like how like whenever you drop a piece of bread, will always drop butter side first, but cats always land on their feet. So if you put a piece of buttered toast on the back of a cat and drop it, it'll just flip forever in like an infinite perpetual motion kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if you just have Reigns and Cena there just fight, and it'll just never stop, and then they have to just fight each other forever, and they can go live on Fighting Each Other Island and not be in it. And then you can have a live stream of it.
Yeah.
So you can go to WWE, watch how is the match going? Oh wow, they seem like they're like getting really hungry and they've lost a lot of weight because they're on Fighting Each Other Island. Doesn't matter.
Evan, in this house, we obey the laws of thermodynamics.
But not physics, and that's what's important, because I don't think this is as much of a thermodynamic issue.
Well, it's a Simpsons reference that missed you completely.
I know, I got it, and I was just playing
but then you ruined it. You ruiner.
I haven't gotten Disney Plus yet, so I haven't rewatched a lot of old Simpsons in a long time. Thank you, premium listeners, so much. Thank you to our newest guy. We thanked you on a mini-sode already, but whatever. Thank you, Lord Omelette, for being the first patron we have that we don't know personally.
Hail his lordship.
That is a big, seriously, a big fucking moment for us. And we really appreciate it. Y'all are the best. See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.